This be like us is over. This be like us or become like us is over.
Nobody wants to be the politician who has to explain to the people it's over.
Embedded by John Winthrop in Massachusetts Bay. And that he got his warning, his words, his promise and the warning from Moses, from Deuteronomy, specifically from Deuteronomy 28, that says if you are you follow God, here are the blessings. You turn away, here's what's going to happen to the nation. Comes a warning. Now, one of the patterns of biblical judgment, national judgment, is that years before the actual judgment of the nation, there comes a shaking, a wake-up call. It comes in the form of an enemy strike that comes, shakes the land. God is calling the land back, and then they are given a space of years, however long, to come back to God. Now, it happened, America got its shaking on 9/11. Same pattern.
I'm seeing white professor, white preacher, white economists, the great thinkers of America, they have approved, they have accepted, and they're telling us that it is true. America is falling. And somehow too, it is prophetic, okay? Family. For example, a pastor like Jonathan Kahn, okay? He's a Messianic Jewish rabbi and author, okay? And Kahn has been a prominent voice in warning about American morals, spiritual decline, and he often referenced biblical prophecies, particularly from the book of Isaiah, to draw parallels between ancient Israel's downfall and America's current trajectory. His work, such as the Humbinger, have resonated with many who see a prophetic warnings in current event. Someone like Ellen G. White, a co-founder of the Seventh-day Adventist, and White, he wrote extensively about the role of the United States in the end-time prophecy. And she described the U.S. as a second beast in Revelation. We have white professors who have talked about the fall of America. They have said, J.D. Esty, okay? Is it J.D. Esty? Yeah. J.D. Esty, this is a professor at the University of Pennsylvania. Okay, Esty has written about the decline of America global dominance, suggesting that the U.S. is transitioning from a superpower to a second class or a second place nation. Somebody like Amitav Achaya, okay, a professor at the National University of Singapore. So even great thinkers have been there, talking about this. So it is clearly that the fall of American empire, it is not just black people are talking about it. It is evident. It is evident. Okay? And that's what I'm going to talk about today. But before I go down in that video, I want to watch these clips of our professors and pastors, and then we continue.
Same thing. Now, every Sabbath day, once a week, there is an appointed word in all the synagogues of the world where they open up the scrolls and there's
a word appointed from ages past that is appointed for that day, that week. And in America, there are many Jewish people, and New York City has more Jewish people than anywhere else. So all over New York City, they were opening up to this. The days that were leading up to 9/11, just before 9/11, they opened up the scrolls. There was a word appointed from from ages past to for that time that led into 9/11. What was it? It was the word of Moses from Deuteronomy 28. The exact source that John Winthrop gave to warn America, do not turn away from God. What does it say? It was appointed for the day that led into the 9/11. It tells of what happens if you turn away from God. All the blessings you had, you're going to lose them. Number one. But it says specifically, an enemy will come from a faraway land and strike the nation in its gate. America's gate is New York City. It says he will speak a language you don't understand. He will be of fierce countenance. He will show no compassion to the old or the young. A rain of dust will come upon you in the middle of the day. You'll grope like blind men. The enemy will strike you as an eagle flying from the sky. The Hebrew word specifically says an eagle swooping down. Every single plane came like that. On 9/11, the enemy came as an eagle swooping on the land. Everyone And and on the very plane that began 9/11, it was carrying a symbol, and the symbol was an image of an eagle swooping down. The same biblical sign of judgment that came from the same scripture that was appointed to usher in 9/11, and from which John Winthrop gave the warning. One more thing to share before we bring this to where we are. From the Harbinger 2, when John Winthrop spoke of the city on the hill, it wasn't just America. I mean, yeah, it was America. That was the big picture, but there was an actual city that he founded himself and then became its first governor. It was the capital of Massachusetts Bay. It was his city on the hill. It still exists to this day, and it has a name. Its name is Boston. Boston, the city of John Winthrop, city on the hill. So think about it. The warning came from there. Where did 9/11 begin? Boston, the city on the hill. The planes took off from the city on the hill, the city of John Winthrop, who gave the warning. But there's more. John Winthrop had his own land. It was an island off the coast of Boston. On that island, he lived for parts of the year. He planted a vineyard. He prayed for the new civilization. He could see Boston and America. He would pray. John Winthrop was the first governor of Boston, so the island was called Governor's Island. It was Winthrop's Island. What happened to the island of John Winthrop? In the 20th century, it became an airport, Logan Airport, the very ground from which 9/11 began. They took off from the ground of John Winthrop, who gave the warning, don't fall away from God, on the same week when the very scripture he used was being proclaimed throughout New York City. The enemy saying an enemy will come like an eagle. What happens next? In the case of ancient Israel, after that first warning, instead of turning back to God, the nation hardened itself, turned all the more away from God. Its apostasy accelerated. We are watching the same exact thing. Since 9/11, people thought, well, 9/11, people will come back to God. Well, they rushed to the churches for 3 weeks. They rushed and said, God bless America, but there was no repentance, no turning. If you don't turn, there's no revival. And so instead of getting better, we got worse. It's become now a free fall. Where does it end? It doesn't end well. The template ends with judgment, with a fall of a nation.
This country will never recover. There is no coming back from this. And that is, in fact, a good thing for us. America needed to implode from the inside because Lord knows there is no one outside of us that will make that shit happen. We had to do it to ourselves. This country has never been good. That was all a lie. It was all propaganda. This country was built on the foundations of racism, genocide, patriarchal systems, and one of the most exploitive economic systems that humans have ever seen in all of our history, and that is capitalism. Our foundations are bad. And this is what resulted from that. It's built into every single facet of our lives. It's built into our education system, our criminal justice system, our healthcare, our laws, our economy, everything that constitutes a daily part of our existence. They have the ingredients for the roots with which this country came from. And there is no making that better. It's like baking a cake with regular flour and then wanting to make it a gluten-free cake. It's not going to happen. You can't do that. So you scrap the whole cake and you bake a new one with gluten-free flour. It's like cleaning out an infectious wound. If you don't get every last bit of the bad bacteria, it will get reinfected. A tumor, if you don't scrape out every single last cancerous cell, the tumor will regrow. And that is the reason why we keep seeing this shit popping up every single generation. We are fighting the same fucking fights over and over because we have never completely cleaned out the racist, patriarchal, capitalist, genocidal roots that are our foundations in this country. It has to crumble. It has to. And the shitty part about it is how much collateral damage there will be in the process in terms of the people who are harmed by this. But every single one of us is now paying the price for the evil, oppressive systems that our ancestors built this country on. That is their legacy. And so it is our responsibility to be better ancestors to our descendants, to build a system that they don't have to suffer from 100, 200 years from now.
The key question for everyone to be asking themselves, especially those in leadership, is how fast? And then the second question is, how do we arrest it to a certain extent? You can't stop it. It's impossible. But you can arrest it, and you can build a glide slope down which the empire slides, if you will, because there are equals in the world now. China, of course, is one of them. With nuclear weapons, you must say that Russia is one of them. And India comes very close to being one of them. It's a multipolar world now. You can't have a hegemon that is all things to all people 24/7.
The American empire is over. We're done. We peaked about 12, 15 years ago, and we are on a down. And it's very hard for the American people, which I understand. I am one. It's hard to get your head around that. We've had a century of on the way up, which is a lot more fun than on the way down. But it does happen to every empire. We're only the latest. Look at the British, how far they've fallen. We're in that process. So the problem with the trickle down is, yeah, there might be more jobs, but they're going to be created in China. They're going to be created in Brazil. They're going to be created in India. They're not created here. We have the greatest level of corporate debt this country has ever seen, off the chart. The greatest level of personal debt, and we have the greatest level of government debt. Our government debt is now trillions of dollars greater than our annual output. That was not the case in the 20th century. It is the case now. What you're seeing is desperation politics. The whole Trump phenomena ought to say to you, wait a minute, these jerky moves that are out of whack, right? In recent days, we have seen the decision of the Trump administration to kiss the war in Ukraine goodbye. We're not doing that no more because we can't afford it. We can't keep funding a war, which, by the way, the West is losing, as anybody who pays attention knows. All of these things are signs of what? Of a country that is in trouble and is turning on its friends because it can to save itself. We're going to take over, we're going to get your energy for nothing. We're going to, make you build the wall, Hugh, in Mexico. Look what the genius in a way of Mr. Trump is that without understanding it, because clearly he doesn't, he feels in his own way, the way lots of people do, that there's something that necessitates going way beyond what has been done because our need as a society is beginning to show up. Look, let me give you a simple example. The best electric vehicles in the world right now, but by uniform global agreement, are produced by something called the BYD Corporation, which probably most folks have never heard of, which is Chinese. BYD, the initials, BYD. They make the best quality, cheapest electric car and truck. All right. You don't see them anywhere in the United States. Why not? Because Mr. Trump put a 27% tariff on them, and Mr. Biden raised it to 100%. So let me give you an example. If you wanted to buy a $30,000 BYD electric vehicle, which you could do, that's what they charge. That's why it's so good. You would have to pay $30,000 to get the Chinese to ship it here. Then you'd have to give another $30,000, 100%, tariff to Uncle Sam, or in this case, Uncle Don, in the way of a tariff. So it would cost you $60,000, which you're not going to do because you can get a less good Tesla or GM or Ford or anybody else at $40,000 to $50,000, which is less than you'd have to pay. But here's the problem.
I was going to say, because right now this sounds like a good plan to a lot of people. Trump has said, I'm going to do this not just to China, although he's going to double existing tariffs to China, obviously. Right. But Mexico, Canada, everybody. If we intensify the tariffs, the scenario you just painted will happen, and people will be forced to buy U.S. stuff.
Right.
Which then creates U.S. jobs, which again stimulates the economy.
All right, let me be the economist, Okay, that's good for the Tesla company, which I'm sure is purely coincidental, and GM and Ford and the others. Good. And they'll maybe be able to hold on to some jobs. Good. But now let's follow the bouncing ball, because that's my job as an economist. Yeah. Everywhere else in the world, every company in Asia, Africa, Latin America that competes with an American company that has to buy a truck as part of its business will go to China and buy the best truck at the lowest price, $30,000, the best truck. No American company that competes with them will do that. And you know what that means? Those companies will be able to charge a lower price because they have better inputs than the American company, which doesn't. In the long run, that will lose Americans' jobs left and right as they're outcompeted by all the rest of the world that can go and buy, and is buying, BYD trucks. If you go to Europe right now and you go on the auto routes all over Europe, you'll see BYD cars and trucks. America is shooting itself in the foot. It may be great politics for Mr. Trump. I'm helping the auto companies and the workers. He'll go to Michigan and give us... Yeah, but what you're doing is diminishing the capability of the United States to hold on at a time when its footprint in the world is shrinking. If you take the United States together with the other G7 countries, that used to be the dominant bloc of the world, right? The United States, let's just enumerate them so everybody knows. Canada, Japan, Germany, France, Italy, and Britain, okay? The G7, and I'm going to add up all the GDP, gross domestic product, total output of goods and services of all of those 7 countries, U.S. and its major allies. And now I'm going to compare it to the gross added up GDPs of China and its allies, known now as the BRICS. Okay, you add up the United States, about 28% of world output. You add up China and the BRICS, it's 35% of the world output. We aren't the wealthiest bloc in the world. We're number 2. And that's new. And that changes everything. Every country in Asia, Africa, Latin America, trying to figure out who to go to borrow money from, who to go to cut a deal with, who to go to sell your exports, who to go to invest in your railroads. You know where they used to go? Washington, London, Paris, of course. Now they go there.
But they go to India and Brazil.
That's right. They go to Sao Paulo, New Delhi, Beijing, and they ask, can you give us a better deal? And here's the news I got to give you. They get the better deals. And they go that way. And that's not going to stop. And you can rattle your sabers all over the... You put the 7th Fleet in the South China Sea. Isn't going to change that. You've got to come to terms with that, but we are led by people who don't want to do that because nobody wants to be the politician who has to explain to the people it's over.
This be like us is over. This be like us or become like us is over. And that's what the Americans cannot understand. They still believe that they have to lead. The world must be led by the Americans. And the reason they can't see it and they are in denial is that it's going down. Not the US as a state or a society, but as an empire. And all empires go down. There's no empire that has existed forever. So you may say the United States today is Titanic. The West is sitting as restaurants in Titanic, and the water is coming up around the windows. Now, instead of then reaching out and say, okay, our time is over, we will be one among many and we will cooperate with you, what they do is they insist on one thing, and that is to dominate by means of deception, untruths, narratives, and secondly, militarism. I would like to predict at this occasion, United States will go the same way as the Soviet Union because it is militarizing itself to death. The Americans don't do diplomacy anymore. They send weapons. They pour in weapons because that's what they are best at. But no country can survive with just being strong in one sense, for instance, militarily. If you become politically weak, you become economically weak, you become psychologically weak, you become weak in terms of international law and legitimacy, then you are on your way down. A strong country is one which has high level on all power indicators and do not over-militarize and neglect the other power scales. The United States has, you can say, a MIMAC. MIMAC, Military Industrial Media Academic Complex. These are elites who have common interests with each other, such as producing weapons, selling weapons, using weapons, destroying countries, rebuilding countries again. But they do not have any common interest with the people in their countries. They're outside democratic control, and who said that? President Dwight D. Eisenhower in 1961 or 2, or whenever he made his farewell speech. It's a very famous speech by a man who was a general himself, who said the United States has developed a military-industrial complex. He didn't call it MIMAC as I do. And we need to put it under control to remain a democracy. What is undermined very, very clearly now is pluralist open media and our democracy in the West, because everything is now geared to warfare and militarism. More, more, more. There's nobody who stops to think. There's nobody who stops to think about the long-term consequences of pouring in weapons and never solving the conflicts. You just look at what goes on now in Israel. The country that had so much weaponry already, had nuclear weapons, have had a special agreement with weapons with the United States, $5 billion a year, I don't know for how many years. What is the first reaction in Washington? We must transfer even more weapons to Israel. This is a sick society. It's a sick way of thinking. And of course, this whole thing has to do with, as I said before, the dream, the unrealistic dream or illusion that if we can get rid of Russia as an opponent, and we have created that opponent ourselves because they never invaded a NATO country, they hope that they can concentrate all NATO's resources on a Cold War or, God forbid, a hot war against China. You just go to NATO's homepage and you look at the threat perception. NATO is now characterized to be something like a church. You either believe in this nonsense or you don't. There's never an argument on NATO's homepage. The text is, China is a threat or a challenge because China is different from us. China has different interests from us in the West. Now, if that's how you define a threat, everybody around the world basically is a threat. So the whole thing is a military-industrial complex lives from finding enemies, because if you don't have enemies, or say you have enemies, or appoint somebody, or make enemies, you can't legitimate your own arms development, and the military-industrial media academic complex will fall apart. So that's why the moment we get rid of that military-industrial media academic complex, we can begin to talk to each other as human beings. So the long story short here, I think, is that
Grand Rising Kings and Queens, welcome back to my YouTube commentary. I hope you are doing okay. For those who are seeing me for the first time, please consider subscribe. Those who are seeing me another time, please consider sharing. And for those who are seeing me a lot of times, please, I love you so much, all of you. I'm just happy that you are here watching this video. Now, straight to the point. A number of years, America has been portrayed as the land of freedom, you know. Exactly. In Africa, we believe it's a land of milk and honey, land of opportunities and matched power, you know. And behind these images, we see, there's a lot of lies. It's a lot of lies, okay? And professors right now, pastors, thinkers have begun to openly talk about the cracks in the American foundation. Someone like Jonathan Kahn, for instance, okay? The pastor has consistently warned about America's moral and spiritual decline, okay? In his book, he draws parallels between biblical Israel and America today, okay? Showing that a nation ignoring justice, a nation ignoring mercy and humility is bound to face consequences. He shows that prophetic signs of warnings are being ignored, you know? And yet they are visible to those willing to see. Now, we have Ellen G. White, co-founder of the Seventh Day. Writing over centuries ago, she predicted that America would play a pivotal role in the events leading to the end times. Okay? And white want of a nation morally weakened, spiritually dirting or spiritual drifting, okay? And increasingly reliant on pride and power rather than righteousness. Her prophecy was not religious. It was a social, it was political warning that resonates strongly in today's crisis, okay? Even a lot of historians like Neil Howe, William Strauss, through their fourth turning theory, forecast that America is entering a period of crisis, a turning point where institutions, where culture and politics could collapse if renewal does not occur. They talked about that. And the cyclical pattern they describe has been evident in the decline of trust in government, polarization of society, and economic instability. So it is like it is happening. Okay, America kept on ignoring this, believing of the superior and everything, but it's happening. Okay, America right now, the Americans' decline is not just spiritual or moral; it is economic. Okay, white thinkers like Curtis Yevin, known for his neo-recreational writings, openly critique the decay of American system. Okay, he predicts a radical restructuring of society because the current structures are unsustainable. Corporate America is also facing a reality many refuse to discuss publicly. Jobs are leaving, industries collapsing, and America's dependence on foreign labor and black innovation is undeniable. Okay? Think of the massive exodus of skilled workers, the decline in industrial productivity, and the hollowing out of powerful cities. These are signs that white intellectuals acknowledge. These are signs, even if mainstream media refuses to cover it, but these are signs, and the professors, the great thinkers, have acknowledged it. Beyond economics, the moral and culture fabric of America, again, is distorting. Okay? Pastors like Jonathan Kane urge that the moral failure of a nation, crime, drugs, family breakdown, and the rise of nihilism are signs of divine warning. White scholars studying social trends also note that this cultural decay, from declining education standard to the erosion of the community values. So this decay that we are seeing is visible in America right now. It's visible in American society today. We have broken families, we have unchecked violence and growing dependence on technology over human connection. Okay? While many may just shrug it off as change or modernization, prophetic voices, both black and white, recognize it, and it's a warning. It's a warning. When you look at the politics of America, we call political corruption and systematic failure. American politics system is just another area of decline. Okay, even white intellectuals like Amitav Achaya warned that the United States' global influence is warning because of the internal decay, because of the corruption, because of the political polarization and manipulation of the laws that have made governance ineffective. Okay, and where some see democracy, but these thinkers see a crumbling empire. Where some saw democracy, the prophetic connection is clear that just as past empire failed due to internal rot, America is bound on that. America is showing signs of internal weakness that cannot be ignored. Black leaders have long predicted that the white system built on oppression and exploitation is unsustainable. And today, even those within the system see the writing on the wall. This is something I call prophetic alignment. It's a prophetic alignment. Why? Because what is most striking is the alignment between these white voices and black prophetic insight. Because black leaders and thinkers long warned about the unsustainable nature of white dominance, okay? From Marcus Garvey to modern Pan-African visionaries, okay? And the message has always been systems built on exploitation will fail and black people will rise. So when white pastors, when white professors and intellectuals begin to admit decline, it is more than an observation. It's a prophetic confirmation. So the fall they see is the very fall black voices have been preparing their people for, spiritually, economically, and culturally. And that's why maybe outside you are seeing black people like they ain't crying. Black people ain't shocked. Black people, it's because black people have been preparing for this moment. Black people have been preparing for the moment. Okay? While the white systems falters, black people are rising economically. While they fail, black people are rising culturally. When they fail, black people are rising politically. Black communities are building resilience. Okay, diaspora movements, investment in Africa, and reclamation of ancestral wealth are signs that black people are preparing for a new world order. Okay, one that is independent, united, and powerful. Now, white thinkers see America falling and black people rising, and this is the prophetic turning point. Okay, the moment the narrative shifts, and the truth of black resilience and vision is undeniable. Now, I'll say this: the prophetic warnings are clear, and black people must recognize this. Black people must recognize the decline of systems that were never built for their prosperity. Black people must invest in Pan-African unity and build communities that were self-sustaining. They must understand that even those who warned about America's fall are limited. They cannot save black people. Okay? Only we can save ourselves. And this is a historical moment. The warnings from white thinkers, professors, and pastors are not to scare us. They are confirmation. They are prophets aligned, and the rise of black power is inevitable. Okay? Now, I'll say this. Sometimes when you look at the history, you may see patterns, because history shows that no empire built on exploitation, arrogance, or moral corruption lasts forever. Okay? From Rome to Britain, every empire eventually faced collapse. And white scholars like Neil Hall and William highlights the nations that go through cycles of rise and fall. Okay, America, the urge is in the fourth turning period of crisis, where institutions are tested, social cohesion weakens, and leadership often fails. Okay, even pastors like Jonathan Kahn draw on biblical history to show the nations ignoring justice and humility, and is destined to fail. You know, ancient Israel collapse, the fall of Babylon, and the decline of the Greece all share common patterns: pride, corruption, oppression of the vulnerable, and a disconnect from spiritual and moral principles. America today mirrors many of these signs, the signs of going down. The prophetic significance is clear. When even white thinkers acknowledge decline, it confirms what black leaders have been saying for centuries. System built on oppression cannot last, and the era of black rise and empowerment is near. You're seeing economic crack in America, because economically, America dependence on black labor and innovation cannot be ignored. From tech to entertainment, finance to sports, black contributions are vital to American prosperity. Yes, these contributions are often exploited while black communities face systematic inequalities. Thinkers like Yavin critique Americans' falling structures, noticing that economic instability is tied to political management and cultural decay. Industries that once thrived, manufacturing, traditional media, are in decline, while sectors that black communities or black talents are inside, they are booming. So this shift is prophetic. System cannot sustain itself without the very people it oppressed. Okay? And corporate America is also experiencing wide flight from cities like Detroit, Chicago, and even New York. Okay? All of these cities, they are witnessing a demographic transformation, because white residents leave, industries crumble, and urban centers once controlled by the elite are now increasingly driven by a diverse population, including black communities stepping into economic leadership. Okay? Again, when you look at cultural decay is another sign of the falling of America. Okay? Political corruption, systematic failures, all of these are there. And black empowerment is there to hold the shift. So whenever you see these videos of white scholars, white prophets, white pastors, it is reality, and it's happening, and we are seeing signs. Signs are here. Signs are here on our table openly. The fall of America cannot be stopped. They ignored for a long time. Signs were there. They ignored. They were told. They ignored. And right now, it is going down. Tell me what you think on the comment section about this video. Until next episode, peace out.